My wife cheated with her boss, stole $250, $0 from our joint account to buy a house with him, and now she's trying to legally take everything. How did it all go so wrong? Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, typing out a story about how everything I built with my wife, Emily, fell apart so suddenly. It all started with little things. She'd be more secretive about her phone, disappearing for hours without telling me where she was going, and snapping at me for asking questions. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was stressed at work or just busy. But then, there were the late nights she claimed were work dinners, even though her phone was always locked, and her excuses sounded more and more hollow. What really tipped me off was the way she started changing her routine, the way she dressed up more often, and the fact that she was suddenly obsessed with her appearance. She'd spend hours at the gym, then come home acting like she was exhausted from working late. It was subtle at first, but I knew something was off. I remember one night I caught her texting someone. Her fingers froze on the screen when I walked into the room. She quickly closed the message, acting innocent, but I saw enough to know she was hiding something. Then came the night I decided to check her phone when she was asleep. I know trust is supposed to be there, but I just had this gut feeling. I grabbed her phone, unlocked it with a little effort, and scrolled through her messages. That's when I saw it. A string of texts with her boss, Mark, talking about how they finally did it and plans to buy a house together. My stomach dropped. I saw the pictures, flirty ones, suggestive, the kind of stuff you don't send your boss unless you're crossing a line. I couldn't believe it. My wife, Emily, was cheating on me with her boss, Mark. They were planning to buy a house together. I kept scrolling, and there was a bank statement attached. She'd transferred $250, $0 from our joint account into an account under her name, supposedly for a new house. That amount of money, it's a fortune. I knew she had been acting weird about money lately, but I never suspected she'd steal that much. I felt sick. All those years of trust, the memories we created, suddenly felt like a lie. I wasn't just betrayed emotionally, I was betrayed financially. She was planning to leave me, take everything, and run away with her lover. I was furious, but I also felt numb. How did it all go so wrong? How did I miss the signs? How did my wife, who used to be so sweet, turn into someone capable of such lies and betrayal? I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew this was just the beginning. The real storm was about to hit. The next morning, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, replaying everything I'd seen the night before. I kept thinking about the $250, $0 she stole, the plan to buy a house with Mark, and what that meant for us. I felt this mix of rage, heartbreak, and a strange sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't let her get away with it, not without a fight. I decided I needed to confront her face to face. No more hiding, no more pretending everything was fine. I waited until she got home from her gym session, which I now knew was just her meeting up with Mark or some other guy. When Emily walked in, she looked even more put together than usual, like she had been preparing for something. Her eyes flicked nervously around the room, but she tried to act normal. "Hey," she said, trying to smile, but it was strained. "What's up?" I looked straight at her, my voice steady but cold. "We need to talk now." Her smile faded. "What do you mean?" I pulled out her phone, the messages still visible on the screen. "I know about Mark, about the house, about the money you stole from us." Her face went pale for a second, then she scoffed, trying to brush it off. "That's not what you think. You're overreacting. It's just business stuff, nothing to do with us." "Business stuff," I repeated, voice rising. "You've been lying to me for months. You've been sneaking around, texting him, planning to leave me for him. And you stole over 200 grand from our joint account. How do you justify that?" She crossed her arms defensively. "Look, I was going to tell you, okay? I just needed time to figure things out. You're always so controlling, so jealous. I didn't want to fight. And the money, it's for our future. Mark's not a bad guy. He's helping me get out of this dead-end marriage." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That was her excuse. "Helping you get out. You're planning to run away with him, and you're calling it our future. You're a liar, Emily, and you're a thief." She shrieked, "You don't know what you're talking about. You're just jealous because I don't want to be stuck with a boring, useless husband like you. Mark's the one who actually cares about me, unlike you who's just a paycheck and a minder." That was it. The venom in her voice, the way she spun her lies, something inside me snapped. I told her I wanted her out of the house, that I was done listening to her bullshit. She screamed, called me controlling, a jealous maniac. But I didn't care. I wanted her gone, and I wanted the truth out in the open. I was exhausted, angry, and heartbroken all at once. I knew this wasn't just about money or a cheating wife anymore. It was about betrayal on every level. I'd trusted her with my life, and she'd thrown it all away for some guy who was probably just as manipulative as she was. I realized that everything I thought I knew about my marriage was a lie. And now I had to figure out what to do next, how to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. After I kicked Emily out that afternoon, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the empty space where she used to be. The house felt different, cold, hollow. My mind kept replaying her words, her lies, trying to make sense of it all. I couldn't understand how she could be so callous, stealing from us, planning to run off with her boss, all while pretending everything was fine. I felt betrayed on every level, not just emotionally but financially. That $250, $0 wasn't just a number. It was our life savings, our future. Everything we'd worked for. I started digging into the bank statements, trying to figure out exactly how much she'd taken, where it went, and how she managed to hide it for so long. That's when I found the real shocker. The account she transferred the money into was under her name, but it wasn't just for a house with Mark. It was also for a lavish lifestyle, luxury cars, designer clothes, expensive dinners. She had been living beyond her means, all the while telling me she was worried about money. That's when it hit me. She was planning her escape for months, probably even before I suspected anything. I also discovered that she'd been secretly contacting lawyers, trying to figure out how to legally take everything from me once she left. I found emails where she was asking about divorce laws, alimony, and how to protect her assets. She'd even hired a lawyer herself without telling me. That's when I realized she wasn't just cheating. She was actively plotting to leave me with nothing. All the while I was clueless, thinking we were building a life together. The emotional blow was overwhelming. I felt like a fool. How could I have missed all these signs? How could she lie so easily? I kept asking myself if I'd ever really known her. She'd always been bitchy at times, yes, but I thought it was just her personality. I never imagined she'd be capable of such deception, of stealing from us, or of betraying me so completely. And the worst part, she was trying to make me look crazy, accusing me of being paranoid or jealous every time I questioned her. In the days that followed, I felt like I was walking through a fog of anger and sadness. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Mark smiling, planning their new life. I wondered how she could be so ruthless, so manipulative. She lied about everything, her feelings, her intentions, even her love. And I'd been so blind. I kept telling myself I should have seen it coming, but deep down, I just wanted to believe she was the woman I married. I knew I had to do something. I wasn't just going to let her walk away and take everything. I started looking into legal options, divorce, freezing accounts, protecting what was left of our assets. I was sure how far she'd go, but I knew I couldn't just sit there and let her win. I had to fight, not just for my money, but for my dignity. I realized I wasn't going to get her back, not after all this, but I could at least try to salvage what little was left of my life. That was the point I decided I'd take control, no matter how messy or painful it was going to be. Over the next few days, I threw myself into action. I wasn't going to let her get away with this without a fight. First, I contacted a lawyer I found through some recommendations. I needed to understand my rights and, more importantly, how to prevent her from draining whatever was left of our joint assets. The lawyer, a sharp guy named David, listened patiently as I laid out everything. The stolen money, her plans to divorce, her lawyer engagement, the house plans with Mark. David explained that I had grounds for a legal separation, and we could file for an injunction to freeze her assets and prevent her from selling or transferring any more of our money. He also said I could challenge her claims for spousal support, especially since she'd been planning this for months and had already been secretly working on legal strategies. Hearing that, a small flicker of hope sparked inside me. Maybe I could stop her from taking everything. Meanwhile, I started digging into her accounts, her phone, her emails, whatever I could find. It was a brutal process, but I needed to know what she was hiding. I found more proof, screenshots of her conversations with Mark, plans for the house, even a list of her legal expenses she'd been secretly racking up. She'd been preparing for this moment for a long time, and I realized she'd been deceiving me at every turn. One day, I confronted her lawyer, a woman named Lisa, who confirmed that Emily had already filed for divorce and was seeking to claim a significant portion of our assets, including the house we bought together. She also mentioned Emily's attempt to get a restraining order against me, claiming I was abusive and controlling. That was a complete lie, but I knew she'd try to spin it that way. I had to be prepared for a battle, and I needed to stay one step ahead. The emotional toll was heavy. Every day felt like I was losing more of what I'd worked so hard for, and I was furious at Emily for betraying me so completely. At the same time, I felt the sting of shame and grief. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see her true colors. I'd always believed she was just a bit bitchy, maybe a little manipulative, but I never thought she'd be capable of this level of deception. That realization cut deep. Despite the chaos, I made a vow to myself. I wasn't going down without a fight. I would protect what was mine, and I would find a way to get through this. I knew the road ahead was going to be long, messy, and painful, but I also knew I couldn't let her win. Not after everything. I had to stand tall, even if it meant tearing down the illusion of the perfect life I once thought we had. This was war, and I was ready to fight for my future, even if it meant losing everything along the way. The legal battle dragged on, and every day felt like a new assault on my sanity. Emily was relentless, trying to spin her narrative in court, claiming I was paranoid, controlling, and that she was the victim. Her lawyer, Lisa, was sharp and aggressive, pushing hard to get what Emily wanted: the house, the savings, everything. I had to stay calm, keep my evidence organized, and prepare for the worst. Meanwhile, I started to see just how far Emily was willing to go. She hired private investigators to dig up dirt on me, trying to paint me as unstable. I found out she was even talking about calling the police, claiming I was threatening her just to get a restraining order. It was a brutal game of manipulation, and I had to be smarter than her. I kept records of every conversation, every text, every email. I wasn't going down without a fight. One night, I caught her trying to transfer a large chunk of the remaining money into an offshore account. It was a desperate move. I immediately alerted my lawyer, and we managed to freeze those funds before she could finish. That's when I realized how close she was to losing everything she'd stolen. She was panicked, lashing out, accusing me of trying to ruin her. I just looked at her and thought, no, Emily, you did this to yourself. The emotional toll was intense. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry, more angry than I had ever been in my life. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she betray me, the woman I loved, for some guy who was probably just as manipulative? I kept replaying all the moments, trying to find clues I missed. The truth was, I never really knew her. Not anymore. She'd become a stranger, someone capable of stealing from her own family just to run away with her boss. Despite everything, I knew I had to stay focused. I wasn't going to let her win. I worked tirelessly with my lawyer, gathering evidence, preparing for court. I knew that once the judge saw everything, the texts, the bank statements, the offshore account transfers, she'd see who Emily truly was. My goal was to protect what little remained of my assets and, more importantly, to reclaim my dignity. I also started to think about what I'd do after. I realized I'd need therapy, maybe even a complete overhaul of my life. I'd been blindsided, but I refused to let this define me. I'd rebuild even if it took years. I learned that trusting blindly was a mistake, but now I knew the importance of being cautious, of protecting myself. That's what this experience taught me, that sometimes the people we love the most can turn out to be the ones who hurt us the deepest. And if there's any lesson to take from it, it's that you have to fight for yourself, no matter how hard it gets. The court date finally arrived and I went in prepared. Evidence organized, my story clear, my resolve firm. Emily showed up with her lawyer trying to look confident, but I could see the cracks in her facade. She kept spinning her lies, claiming I was abusive, jealous, controlling, anything to turn the judge against me. But I had the proof. The texts, the bank statements, the offshore transfers. I presented everything with a calm, steady voice, showing that her claims were baseless and that she'd been planning her escape for months. When the judge reviewed the evidence, it was clear who was the manipulator here. The judge ordered Emily to return the stolen money and froze her assets. She was also denied her request for a restraining order against me, which she had hoped would paint me as dangerous. The courtroom was tense, but I felt a strange sense of relief, like I'd finally taken back control of my life. In the aftermath, I filed for divorce and began the process of rebuilding. I sold the house, which Emily had planned to take from me, and moved into a smaller, more affordable place. The money I managed to recover was a fraction of what she stole, but it was enough to start over. I also cut all contact with her, blocking her from my life completely. I knew I'd never trust her again, and honestly, I didn't want to. Looking back, I realize how much I learned from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and sometimes the people closest to us can betray us in ways we never imagined. I also learned that revenge isn't about destruction, but about reclaiming what's rightfully yours: your dignity, your peace, your future. Emily's betrayal taught me to be more cautious, more guarded, but also stronger. I won't let her define me, and I refuse to let her ruin what little I have left. Now I focus on healing. I see a therapist, reconnect with friends, and try to rebuild my confidence. The pain still lingers, but it's less sharp now. I know I'll never forget what happened, but I also know I'm better for having survived it. The betrayal cut deep, but it also forced me to face my own resilience. I hope anyone going through something similar finds strength in their own story, because if I can get through this, so can you. Life. About moving forward, even when the past tries to hold you back. And in the end, that's what I plan to do: keep moving forward, one step at a time.